Hello, welcome to the Realm of Ideas is Free to All. I'm Bruce Gemmel. I'm an architectural researcher and draftsman. And this is a series of ruminations I do once a week on basic topics as pertains to myself and my work. This is episode 26, Love, the Correlate of the Occasions for Civilization. Follows on what we were talking about last week in terms of beauty, relates to Alfred North Whitehead and some work that he put together in his Adventures of Ideas. Anyway, so let me give you a brief recap of what happened. Basically, I started this series on a different platform and found that it was kind of like got complicated. So I moved over to this platform, to YouTube. I've been enjoying it. I think that there's been very little of concern, and as a result, been able to just kind of do the work as I see fit. So the first thing I talked about was a kind of key idea to my work. It was called the operation of the metaphor, and that was followed by the organic metaphor, the artificial or aesthetic metaphor, and unbreakable bonds, or the proto-metaphor, or what I call the social metaphor. So basically, to break that down, it was simply the idea that there's a way in which ideas generate, but they're also based on a natural process by which things generate. And I went through that in terms of like the natural world, and then I kind of found that that correlates to something that we see in our own interest, in our own use of language, and we see that we like religion always assumes that it created morality because it basically had these principles, but didn't understand that nature actually has its own morality that predates it. And the reality was in this case that the entanglement that creates metaphor predates the use of it in language. So therefore, it's not a language-based discipline. Metaphor is basically an operation that's a natural or organic-based discipline. It's a process. So it's a process that basically kind of comes from nature that we recognize in literature and in art and things like that. So then from there, we talked about some various different things. We started that was back in December of 2024. We talked about unbreakable bonds, the value and necessity of criticism, the art of finding what needs to be said, view criticism as an indicator of societal health. And this was, a case where we kind of looked at the fact that certain things that become useful in society and utility and consequence is something we'll be talking about in upcoming weeks. Anyway, so the idea was the fact that like we could see these things, unbreakable bonds, as having two distinct capabilities. They were things that had a certain utility that allowed us to achieve certain things we hadn't been able to do previously, or kind of regain something that we had lost. And they were also an indicator of societal health in terms of how well we treated them. And we talked about that in relationship to criticism. We found that we were kind of pretty much lacking in a society. And I felt that even over the course of my life, which again was not that long, 66 years and counting, I found that there was a kind of like a decay in terms of that kind of that particular consequence. So then from there, we talked about drawing as a verb, architecture as a verb, drawing towards an organic architecture. And then I think what happened was we went towards the authority of ideas. We talked about my past arc. Then we talked about situations in terms of the way I broke down my particular investigations, my past architecture, my recent past architecture, and then the aftermath or organic design thinking, which basically took me through the way in which I felt like my ideas developed and the kind of like particular place that I kind of moved through. Indicators. Then we had like indicators of society health. No, won't go into all of them, but basically what happened was it kind of traced a series of kind of ideas that kind of were important in terms of kind of shaping my thinking, in terms of not just my kind of way in which I view the world, but also kind of the generative strategy that I use to kind of generate work. Because I think there's a kind of cohesion that kind of can't really be underestimated. So then recently, we've talked about force, power, rule, and persuasion, tradition, and culture. And then the last three were what was a series I called Love, Beauty, and Truth. And then I kind of broke it down into truth, beauty, and love. Talked about these things in terms of the final chapter on civilization in Alfred North Whitehead's Adventures of Ideas, which is basically something that I'm going to kind of correlate to the situation today. And though he doesn't talk about love, he does talk about the idea that there is a particular consequence or instance where there are kind of like precipitates of civilization. So, is beauty or truth something that kind of leads towards civilization, or is it something that's evidence that civilization is present? So, it's not really clear. And in some of the things he says, the notion of civilization is very baffling. We all know that what it means. It suggests a certain ideal for life and this on this earth. And this ideal concerns both the individual human being and also societies of men. A man can be civilized and a whole society can be civilized, although the senses are somewhat different in the two cases. Yet civilization is one of those general notions that are very difficult to define. We pronounce upon particular instances, we can say this is civil or civilized, or that is savage. Yet somehow the general notion is elusive. Thus, we proceed by examples. During the last 6 centuries, the culture of Europe has guided itself by examples. The Greeks or Romans at these best period have been taken as the standard of civilization. We have aimed at reproducing the excellences of these societies, perfectly the society of Athens at its prime. Now that's in saying the fact that like how we understand or kind of identify is difficult enough. But I think in terms of the pieces that he talked about the fact that there was truth, beauty, adventure, art, and peace, and that these 5 things were kind of present in society, either because they led us there or that they were indicators that civilization was present. Now, love was not something that he spoke about, but I feel as if, like, in my case, my understanding is that I'm not here to kind of like reformulate these ideas in Whitehead. I'm just basically there to kind of understand them within the context of what I see. And I think the idea of an indispensability is what I would speak about in terms of love. So before we get started on that, it's time for the most important and valuable part of our segment, which is what's new in Julie. So the artist, painter, writer, and freelance genius is going to kind of share her particular take on love.
Yes.
And kind of introduce us to what's going on in our work.
I will go get it.
Okay. So in the meantime, let me read something that will kind of like, I think, be something to think about. Peace. I am not referring to political relations. I mean a quality of mind, steady in its reliance that fine action is treasured in the nature of things. Now, think about that and think about what we've talked about in terms of indicators of societal health, because it'll start to kind of give us a sense of when we talk about these things, is this indeed present? Oh, this is a great one. This, I love this. I just love holding this.
Yeah, hold it.
The colors of this were just so rich, just so magnificent.
Made some really interesting colors.
Yeah. We were talking about this on the way home, and it's like, the talking about the poor guy who was a brilliant opera singer, but because of the consequence, because of the fact that this is an opera that, because of its difficulty and the circumstance of it, it's a very visceral. Yeah, because there's no one who's not 300 pounds.
No, they don't.
Like waddles around the stage. Exactly. You kind of don't get a lot of opera singers with a 6-pack abs and like rippling kind of like shoulders and biceps
and a flat tummy.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's very funny is those few opera companies that have put on the Pearl Fishers, and you'll find very few productions.
It's going to be hard to show the whole thing.
Yeah, well, it's very tall. I think you can show it in parts.
It's also because of its fine detail, it's hard to get it any kind of resolution.
True.
Finding this, oh my God, this is terrible. I can't really show it. Look how terrible it's showing up.
Well, what a shame. What if you angle it? Oh yeah, when it's close, it is good. When you hold it over here, you are getting the detail. And keep on going. I think you can get an idea. I completed this the signature date My signature date is 12/11/23, so completed at the end of 2023. The title is Nacre Duet, Fissures in the Pearl Fissures, and it is very much all about love and jealousy and love and betrayal and love and friendship and love and scorn and love and murder and love and love. See if you can zoom in on their faces.
It's hard because then the thing is I can't get past the edge of the laptop.
What if you angled it?
You know, we got it. Like one of the things. One of these days, I'm going to get someone who basically will be able to help me with some of the kind of like technical aspects of this, so we could actually
knows all
we
about
could do.
it,
Who?
right?
He knows some.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lance.
he knows. He might know everything I need. But the thing is,
So.
you know, to be able to have this in a sidebar, like say if like if we could have it over here, so it would be
there.
yes, exactly. So we could have this in the screen or kind of superimposed or whatever.
Couldn't you post a photo of it next to you while we're talking about it?
How?
I don't know. Wouldn't the photo go in the sidebar? I'm not really very good at these things.
I don't know about these things. Again, what I would probably do is disconnect the thing and then break my computer.
Yeah, we don't want
like it would just like, oh, that's not good. You know, I'm like the kind of person think, oh, that was the wrong button.
Yeah, we catch a goose.
But anyway,
we get a feather, we make a quill pen, and we write on sheep gut parchment.
Right, exactly. So we're not basically carving in stone with a round flat stone.
Everything can be done with a round flat stone.
So tell us about the particular story.
Well, you can hold it and I will narrate it. So I will start by saying that I assert that Bizet's opera, The Pearl Fissures, which I am using to visualize a new discovery in materials science, which is what this painting is about. Love and material science is a far better opera on every level than is much more popular opera of Carmen, which is played, it's performed all the time. Everyone does a Carmen all the time. It's very overplayed. I mean, it's a fine opera, but it's unfortunately, it's fallen to the level of kind of hackneyed and tried just because it's so overexposed. It's so overperformed.
I think it's been oversimplified. I think there's a lot more consequence in it than there basically is ever given, rise to. Kind of like the fact that it's been simplified to be about like, this particular girl and
a harlot,
and like, and it's just kind of like she's just bad and evil and she does like these kind of like things. But I mean, it's like I think if you were to develop some of her adventures, some of the things in terms of the specifics, and not just kind of like the fact that she's just a kind of like spoiled girl who just takes advantage of people. And actually went into some of the consequences of some of the adventures. It would be much more, and I think that's the kind of thing that a lot of people just don't, it must be very easy to put on a splashy production of Carmen because it's so easy to make it like
it's sultry,
exactly, it's sexy, it's bawdy, it's flashy, it's like, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe she did that part. Oh,
well,
do you believe that?
Will say that the Pearl Fissures is far sexier, and I want to talk about my absolute favorite male opera duet ever, which is Au Fond du Temple Saint, in Back of the Sacred Temple from the Pearl Fissures, which I am visualizing in my painting here. That's what this is about. And I would urge everyone who's listening to go on YouTube and listen to several of our favorite versions of Au Fond du Temple Saint if you want to be carried away